Warm season grasses thrive during the summer. What you see behind me is a spring warm season grass. It's mostly Kikuyu. You might have St. Augustine, zoysia, Bermuda, bahia, centipede, buffalo. There might be some other obscure ones out there. All of these grass types grow best during the summer when the days are long and the heat is high. So long as they have water, they're gonna grow. During the spring, they might look thin, like you see back here. I'm gonna show you how you can thicken up your warm season grass lawn extremely fast in the later parts of spring before summer actually happens. That way, during summer, during your peak season, your lawn will look its best. The first step of what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go ahead and grab either a string trimmer or, if you have one, an edger. And I'm gonna go along the edge. And this isn't just for aesthetic purposes. I'm actually going to cut deeper into the lawn on an angle so that I can get bigger chunks of grass from my edge. Whatever edge you might have, no matter how thin it is, you've got something. And what we're gonna do here is we're gonna capture what we call sprigs. All right, now the longer your overhang is over your sidewalk, the better this is gonna work. My sprigs are very short. Before we keep going, let's sweep all this up and gather it before the wind blows it away. If we put that down on a bare spot, put a little tiny bit of peat moss or coconut coir over the top of it, or just garden soil, it's actually going to root back down. But we got to do it while it's still fresh. Not all of this is going to be able to reroot and turn into grass, but enough of it will to make a difference. What we're going to do is we're going to take this to the most bare and the most thin patches on the lawn, and we're just going to set it on it. Pat it down, cover it up with just a little bit of garden soil, peat moss, or coconut coir. Hey, that's a dirt spot. Let's just put some there. Seems silly, but this works. Here's a pretty good solid dirt patch. I don't have a lot extra, so I'm gonna have to go collect some more from this area, and I'm gonna put it into dirt spots. I'm not gonna be able to get them all. I just want to get the big ones. I'm gonna go ahead and use this topper soil because I already have it in my garage. Why not use it? What is that? Soil for lawns, sod, seed. You should say sprigs, because that's what I'm doing. Go put it on top of the sprigs that you cut, however many you have. Obviously, I don't have a lot of sprigs to work with. I'm gonna try to get a little bit more from that part of the sidewalk. All right, I got a few little spots, the worst of my areas. If you really wanted to take the extra step, you could come down into some of your areas that actually have decent grass, and you could grab something like this, just kind of yank it out of the ground, and that right there, you could then find a spot that doesn't have much coverage. You could do that right there, and then you put a little bit of dirt right on top of it. You could do that all over the place. I'm not going to go to that extreme because this lawn actually isn't that thin. It's definitely thin, but it's not thin enough for me to want to take the time to go ahead and do that, because things like this, if you had a Bermuda or a Kikuyu or St. Augustine, zoysia, all of these things, all of this, see that right there? That's going this way. That's coming out. There's one going that way. This one's coming this way. All of this is going to close in on itself pretty quickly with the next step. The next step is applying fertilizer. Not just any fertilizer. We want to put down some very fast acting water soluble fertilizer, something that doesn't need to get broken down in the soil, and something that we don't have to water heavily to get in. We want it just to get in just enough to the upper level of the root zone and go to work instantly. Typically the go-to in this situation is an uncoated urea, or even better, an ammonium sulfate. These are synthetic The ammonium sulfate, for instance, is a synthetic fertilizer, but I like using natural or organic fertilizers in my lawn. So what I'm going to be doing is using sodium nitrate, which is OMRI listed. That will be my water soluble source of fertilizer. And then I'm going to be putting down an additional bit of corn gluten meal for minimal but some weed prevention, along with soybean meal, which is all going to come from 2 products. I mentioned 3 things, but I'm going to put 2 things on the lawn. This immediate lawn space right here is about 1,000 square feet. So for my corn gluten meal, you could get any brand, but it has to be corn gluten meal, not corn gluten. This is Jonathan Green brand. You can buy this online. I'm pretty sure they carry it at Home Depot as well. You might have to go to the desk and ask for it. But this 15-pound bag covers 5,000 square feet, which means I need 1/5 of the bag. So 1/5 of 15 is 3 pounds. 3 pounds, 10% of that is 0.3 pounds of nitrogen. And it's all slow release nitrogen because it's coming from a natural source, corn gluten. That's got to be broken down in the soil to be used by the grass. So this is what's going to be feeding the lawn a couple weeks from now. This is what I'm going to be using to feed the grass immediately. This is the Grass Genie. It's also 10% nitrogen by weight. This product right here is made up of soybean meal, but if you see right up in here, water insoluble nitrogen, 2.4% of this nitrogen is insoluble. That's from the soybean meal. The other 7.2% of nitrogen comes from the sodium nitrate. That is water soluble, which means it's going to go to work instantly in the lawn. 3/4 of this bag goes to work instantly. 1/4 of this bag goes to work later. This bag is 9 3/4 pounds. If you run the math, I'm going to be putting down approximately 7/10 of a pound of immediate acting water soluble nitrogen, and then the soybean meal plus the corn gluten meal is going to bring me up to 1.25 pounds of nitrogen total, which means roughly 1/2 of a pound of the nitrogen going down is going to work in 2 to 3 weeks, whereas the 0.75 pounds of the water soluble nitrogen is going to go to work instantly. To activate the water soluble nitrogen, we actually have to water it in. So I'm going to apply this to the lawn in my spreader. This right here, to get the weed prevention part of it, needs to go onto soil that isn't very wet. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this down, and then we're going to put this down. I might even mix them together in the spreader if they all fit. And then I'm going to run the sprinklers for like 5 minutes, just enough to get the water soluble stuff into the upper level of the soil, and then allow things to dry out over the next few days to see if any of the weed prevention actually helps. This is always a hit and miss product. I like to think of it as a organic fertilizer that might help stop a few weeds also. All right, now I got all that fertilizer on the lawn. I'm gonna go ahead and link to the products that I used below, but you don't have to use those things. I wanna use natural, organic kinds of products myself. Not everyone does. Standard stuff can be found at pretty much any store. Target, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, all of those big box stores. Anything with urea or ammonium sulfate is going to do. Anything that says ammoniacal nitrogen on the back. And if you do want to put down sodium nitrate, some stores are going to carry that as a standalone product. The next step to this process is mowing the grass. Now, it doesn't look like this needs to be mowed. It's pretty short to begin with, but here's the key. You want this to thicken up quickly before summer happens. I am going to mow my grass every single day without fail. I don't know, maybe I'll skip a day for whatever reason. The point here is to mow every single day. It's like pruning a plant. Every time we mow that grass, it releases like internal, like grass hormones, growth hormones that tell it that tell it to repair itself, heal itself, thicken up, and grow. If we never let it grow tall, never even let it come close to growing tall, then it only is going to grow sideways, or at least that's where the majority of its growth pattern is going to get put into side growth. So those lateral runners, stolons, underground runners, which are called rhizomes. As the grass grows sideways, it's going to thicken up. That's the whole thing. We've got a thin lawn with holes in it. We want it to grow sideways, not up. All right, check this out. It's June 15th, 23 days since I started this thickening process. And although we've still got a little bit of brown kind of dirt showing and a little bit ways to go, there's still some dead POA in here that hasn't been fully covered up by growing turf grass. Everything looks way better, way thicker, way nicer than it did when I started this video off. To give you a summary of what happened within those 3 weeks, I mowed the grass nearly every day for 3 weeks straight. Near the end of May, I ran a soil test and found that my soil was on the acidic side, a little bit too acidic, so I applied some lime to the lawn on the 1st of June. And then somewhere around the 7th of June, I applied iron to the lawn to deepen up the green. That's it. Neither of those two things really push the lawn to grow anymore. They just kind of improve the quality of the lawn. This is going to be the slowest spot to fill in, I think. This was nothing but Poa annua early this spring before I killed it off. This is not yet summer. I feel really good about it getting covered up and having a good summer season here since it's a warm season grass. The last thing I want is for Poa to die off and then have a big dirt spot there all through the fall and the winter. Got really good coverage over here. I believe I've got a little bit of something different growing here than I do right next to it. There's a good chance that I've got Bermuda and competing warm season grass types in here that I couldn't recognize a few months ago. Probably some Bermuda and Kikuyu grass. And of course that difference is sprinkled throughout the lawn. All right, now here's another reason why I think this is a more dense mixture of Bermuda grass than I realized earlier in the spring. Bermuda grass comes out of dormancy a little bit later in the season because of its requirements for heat and light compared to Kikuyu grass. And down here, Kikuyu grass has these little white filaments. These have these little teeny tiny, I'm not sure the correct term to use, these are like little pollen sacs. So in all Kikuyu grass, the male part of the plant sticks up, is basically the top of the flower, and pollen falls off of these little filaments down into the female part of the plant, which is down at the base. You don't really see it. And that's how the seeds pollinate themselves. And if you mow the grass every single day during this flowering phase of Kikuyu grass, you see these filaments the next day. They're just constantly coming up. You basically just don't get rid of them. And the reason I point all of this out is because millions of people in Southern California have Kikuyu lawns, and millions of people have Bermuda lawns. And if we come over here to this section where I've got dense coverage, notice that there are no filaments whatsoever. There's a little girl there though. Hi. It's a spider girl. There's no filaments, there's no pollen heads, pollen flowers. There's nothing. So I believe that a lot of this, if not all of this, might very well be Bermuda grass, some sort of common Bermuda grass, or maybe a hybrid that was installed by a homeowner who knows how long ago. But I've got Kikuyu filaments coming all around here and all around the edges. I've even got them over here. Again, this is just mowed yesterday, so they're still coming up. But you don't see, I don't see them over here. There's been a couple that I've noticed, but not very many. So if you do happen to live in Southern California or maybe Arizona, and you're not sure if you've got a Bermuda grass or a Kikuyu grass, in the mid to late spring, and from my research, the fall time, you're gonna see these filaments as well. Look for them in your lawn. If you find any, then you know it's Kikuyu grass, or at least you know you have some Kikuyu grass in the lawn. Down here, this is another lagging area. This was a lot of dirt. In fact, I put some of the sprigs down somewhere around here I'm not 100% certain if any of them took, but if you do have a lot of sprigs, a lot of growth along your sidewalks, then they will take far easier than the tiny ones that I applied in this video. All of this, I do have growth coming up in all areas. So at some point, all of this is going to fill in. This is, I mean, look at that right there. This is what's going on. That's a really mature Kikuyu plant right there. And down here, I'm looking forward to these spots right next to the sidewalk to fill in. And then this arc of Poa annua is already starting to collapse, getting covered up by the good green that we want. A little bit slower than we'd like, but it's coming along. Over the next few weeks, this lawn is really going to thicken out even more, but I'm going to stop the video right here. Watch this video up here if you really care about having your lawn get the deeper green, that deeper green color that everyone wants in their lawns. If you want your neighbors down the street to notice your house when they drive by, that deep green does it. And this video about ironite will open your eyes in ways that you do not expect.